Title: The Bodyguard Who Tried to Betray Ibrahim Traoré and Paid the Ultimate Price. There are mornings that seem to portend nothing unusual. The sun rises from behind the purple lagerstromia trees, casting its first rays over the capital, Ouagadougou, like a promise of peace. But in the heart of President Ibrahim Traoré, a cold wind is creeping in, signaling what his warrior instinct never misses. Danger is lurking. Ibrahim Traoré is not the type of person to be suspicious. During his years on the battlefield, and even when he stepped up to the position of leader of the country, he learned to trust in people. In the spirit of solidarity of the comrades who once fought shoulder to shoulder with him. But trust does not mean naivety. Traoré knows well. When the halo of power shines brightly, the dark shadows of greed also begin to stir, creeping in even among those closest to him. And among them, there was one person he trusted the most, Mady, his loyal bodyguard, who had always been there silently by his side since his early days as a young commander. Mady had saved Ibrahim's life in a fierce battle in the north, when bullets were whistling past his head and death was just a hair's breadth away. The whole country knew Mady as the president's faithful shadow guard, an inviolable image. But the most beautiful images sometimes hide dangerous cracks. In recent days, Mady's eyes had changed. Those eyes no longer shone with pure integrity, but instead contained a trace of anxiety, hesitation, like someone carrying a heavy secret in his heart. Ibrahim Traoré saw everything, remembered everything, but he still chose to remain silent, partly because he hoped it was just due to work pressure, partly because he wanted to give Mady a chance to turn around before it was too late. That fateful morning, an emergency meeting was held in the presidential palace. Reports from intelligence agencies scattered throughout West Africa were sending strange signals. A plot to overthrow, secretly but extremely dangerous, was being staged. The underground forces from the West, unwilling to witness an independent Africa, were trying to find every way to put a spoke in the wheel of Burkina Faso's journey to Renaissance. In the large conference room, the dim light of the ancient chandeliers shone on Ibrahim's pensive face. He quietly observed each member of his close team, eyes, gestures, seemingly unintentional glances. And it was when his eyes met Mady that he caught a flash of unease, passing too quickly but not escaping the eyes of the person who had struggled between life and death. And then, like a blow to intuition, a secret piece of information was presented to the table. Someone had leaked Ibrahim's movements to a group of foreign mercenaries. In exchange for a huge sum of money and the promise of a position of power after the coup, all the clues, coldly, ruthlessly, pointed to one name, Mady. Ibrahim's heart clenched for a brief moment. The pain was not because of the threat to his life that was all too familiar, but because of the betrayal from the very brother he had trusted with his life. But he did not let his emotions cloud his judgment. If a leader succumbed to his own pain, he would no longer have the sanity to protect millions of lives. No sign was allowed to be revealed. Ibrahim ordered a trap to be put into action. He announced a surprise trip to a sensitive border area, a trip known only to a handful of his guards, including Mady. A prey only takes the bait when it believes it has won, and Ibrahim was determined to let the betrayal reveal itself beyond doubt. That afternoon, the sky was overcast, signaling a storm. Ibrahim stepped out into the courtyard of the presidential palace, wearing a simple, unpretentious uniform. The motorcade was ready, the guards standing at attention, each with a predetermined mission. Mady stood in her usual position, her eyes cold and discreet as the betrayal plan had arranged. But the traitors made a fatal mistake. They forgot that the man they were facing was not a docile politician, but a true warrior. Ibrahim Traoré did not. He signaled with a discreet gesture, a signal he had trained in the old days, and immediately the entire elite security team sprang into action. In a matter of minutes, the ambush turned into a trap in reverse. The mercenaries were quickly overwhelmed, neatly suppressed, without a single shot being fired. In the silenced chaos, Ibrahim's eyes scanned the area, and he saw Mady. He was trying to hide behind, his face pale, his hands trembling. Belated remorse was evident, but it was too late. Ibrahim advanced, each step like a hammer hitting the traitor's heart. Mady fell to her knees, her lips moving in meaningless pleas. But Ibrahim's eyes had no mercy left. For him, betrayal was not just stabbing a person in the back, it was stabbing an entire nation that was waiting, an entire future that millions of people had entrusted to them. He gave the order, "Arrest Mady on the spot." The last rays of the afternoon sun turned blood red, dyeing the Ouagadougou sky a fierce purple. In the small interrogation room, the silence was heavy as a stone, pressing down on the chest. Only the regular ticking of the wall clock sounded, each tick seeming to deepen the suffocation that surrounded him. Mady was tied tightly to the iron chair in the middle of the room. His sinewy arms trembled. His face, the face that Ibrahim had once trusted without question, was now ashen. But what made the atmosphere even heavier was the person standing opposite him, Ibrahim Traoré. There was no shouting, no display of authority, only a cold silence. Ibrahim folded his arms behind his back, his deep black eyes locked on the man before him like a silent verdict. He didn't need to say much. The disappointment in his eyes was sharper than any accusation. After a long while, Mady was the first to break the silence. He spoke, hoarsely, as if struggling to get each word out of his throat. I had no other choice," Mady whispered, her eyes watering, searching for a trace of compassion in the president's eyes. Ibrahim frowned, speaking softly but coldly. "There was no other choice? What about your dignity? What about the oath of allegiance you swore under this flag? Have you forgotten it all?" His voice was not high, not heavy, but each word fell like a knife, stabbing straight into Mady's heart. The traitor lowered his head, not daring to look directly at the person he had sworn to protect with his life. I just wanted," Mady tried to defend, her voice lost in desperation. "They promised me a better life for my family." Ibrahim closed his eyes for a moment, as if to suppress his boiling anger. When he opened them again, the gaze was no longer that of an old friend, but of a leader facing the wounds of betrayal from the very people he once loved. "You sold out your entire country just for a cheap promise?" he asked, his voice low, mixed with sorrow and disgust. Mady burst into tears, tears streaming down his gaunt face. He fell to his knees, trying to crawl closer to Ibrahim, but the ropes were so tight that he could only bow his head helplessly. "I beg you, please forgive me. I was wrong. I know I was wrong," the choked plea echoed in the cold room. In that moment, Ibrahim felt a pain that went deep to the marrow of his bones. Pain because people's hearts had turned black and white. Pain because he understood that betrayal came not only from greed, but also from weakness, from fear, from petty selfishness that the weak could never overcome. He turned his back, walking slowly towards the door. His steps were heavy, but steady. When his hand touched the doorknob, he stopped, not turning his head. His voice echoed, as if talking to himself, as if condemning. "When you betray a man, you can expect forgiveness. But when you betray an entire nation, history will be the one to pass judgment." He ordered the security team, "Lock him up. Wait for the people's trial." No one dared to say a word. All eyes were on Ibrahim with absolute respect, not because of his cruelty, but because of his extraordinary composure in the moment of betrayal. A true leader, they thought, never lets hatred guide his actions. The door closed behind Ibrahim, leaving behind the anguished sobs of the man who had once been loved the most. But he did not look back. His heavy footsteps now pointed only forward, toward the sacred responsibility he bore: to protect the people's trust at any cost. Outside, the night wind had picked up, carrying the smell of damp earth and the rustling of leaves. Ibrahim raised his head to look at the starry sky. In the glittering light, he thought to himself, there will be more trials, more darkness to come, but as long as there is a fire in the heart, an unyielding belief, darkness will never overcome the light. And he would be the one to keep that fire burning until his last breath. The day of judgment came sooner than many had imagined. Throughout Ouagadougou, the air seemed to boil with tense anticipation. News of the betrayal being exposed spread like a dry fire in the middle of a drought. In every street corner, in every market, people were talking, bustling, a mixture of anger and curiosity. This was not just the story of one individual. This was a test for an entire nation that was rising up every day, fighting for its right to self-determination. If betrayal were allowed to pass unpunished, dozens, hundreds of other stabs would be aimed at the back of the fatherland. In a large square right in the heart of the city, a special people's court was set up. Not a closed room, not walls shielding power. Ibrahim Traoré had ordered, "Let justice take place before the eyes of the people, under the sunlight, so that the truth would have no place to hide." Mady was led into the middle of the square. His once proud military uniform was now wrinkled, stained, and no longer majestic. Under the scrutiny of thousands of people, the people he had sworn to protect, Mady trembled like a winter leaf. Ibrahim Traoré stepped onto the high platform, his face showing neither hatred nor triumph, only a cold determination, as if carved from stone. He spoke, his voice low but resonant across the square. "Today, we are not just judging a man. Today, we are judging an idea. That greed can sell out the future of a nation, and we will answer clearly, number." A thunderous roar rose from the sea of people. He tried to say something, but the noise overwhelmed him, his feeble excuses fading into thin air. He knew that whatever he said now would be useless. No one could wash away the betrayal. No one could reverse the flow of contempt he had sown for himself. An official read aloud the indictment, complete with irrefutable evidence. Documents, recordings, backroom deals. Each piece of evidence was like a hammer, hammering on the coffin of a long-dead honor. And then, in the moment when everyone thought the death sentence would be pronounced immediately, Ibrahim raised his hand to signal a pause. He asked to speak further. Everyone held their breath. The wind seemed to have stopped. Ibrahim stepped down from the high platform and approached Mady. He stood before the traitor, his eyes staring straight ahead, not a bit of evasion. And then, in a voice that was both cold and strangely kind, he spoke. "I could sentence you to death right now. I could let the anger of thousands of people end your fate in the blink of an eye." Mady shrank back, her whole body trembling. "But if I do that, how am I different from them? How are we different from those underground forces who only know how to use blood to cover up their fear?" He raised his head and looked out at the silent sea of people. "We are building a new country, a country where there is no room for blind hatred. We will punish sin, but we will not kill in the name of hatred." Then he turned and ordered, "Mady will be stripped of all his titles and honors. He will spend the rest of his life in prison, working to atone for his sins. Every day, every minute, he will remember that betrayal does not bring liberation, only infamy that can never be washed away." A murmur rose in the crowd. Many people had not yet accepted this mercy, but then, gradually, applause broke out. At first, sparse, then surging like a wave. Ibrahim stood there, not proud, not ostentatious. He silently bowed his head to the people, then turned and walked away, his figure lonely but majestic, like a warrior who had conquered not only his enemies, but also the darkness within himself. That night, when the city had fallen asleep, Ibrahim walked alone to the roof of the presidential palace. The cool night wind blew across his pensive face. Looking up at the starry sky, he knew that the ordeal was not over. The underground forces will continue to seek to break the spirit of Burkina Faso. But he also knew one thing for sure. When the hearts of the people are awakened, when justice is done with integrity and not with cold blood, no force can subdue it. The sky opened, and Ibrahim Traoré, the leader with an unyielding heart, continued to walk on the path he had chosen. The path of light, of hope, and of a truly free Africa. Time passed, like the changing winds of the seasons on the endless savanna of Africa. But the story of that day of reckoning, of the president who chose justice over hatred, did not fade from the memory of the people of Burkina Faso. It became a smoldering flame, silently lighting up the hearts of millions, day after day. In the months that followed, Ibrahim Traoré did not allow himself to rest. He knew that a moral victory was not the final victory. Enemies were still lurking in the shadows. Invisible hands were still pulling the strings, nurturing new plots. But every step he took, every policy he issued, every speech he made was as strong as an oath. Burkina Faso would never return to the days of being manipulated by foreign powers. He pushed for reform, internal cleansing, and built a new team, young, dedicated people, unencumbered by rotten legacies. Education programs were launched across the country, from the cities to the remote countryside. Ibrahim understood clearly. Only knowledge and self-respect could protect a nation from temptation and oppression. But he also understood something even more important. The heart of this nation needed to be healed. Mady's betrayal, though punished, still left a lingering wound in the hearts of many. A wound of suspicion, of the fear that even the closest people can turn their backs when the light of power is too bright. So Ibrahim did not just lead by authority, he led by sincerity, by his own example. He often went on unannounced inspections, even appearing alone many times in crowded markets, poor villages, quietly listening to the smallest voices of the people. No cameras, no noisy entourage, just a man and the people. Every time like that, surprised eyes followed him, then turned to tears of emotion. They realized this was not a president sitting on an arrogant throne. This was a son of the motherland, a warrior of the people, a man carrying in his heart the resilience of an entire continent. One afternoon, when Ibrahim was standing in the middle of a small village on the border, talking to barefoot, naked children, an old man with a white beard walked up. He placed his gaunt hand on his shoulder. His deep eyes seemed to contain the seasons of sunshine and rain of the earth and sky, then said in a trembling voice, "My son fought beside you. He fell, but never regretted it. And now, looking at you, I know that sacrifice was not in vain." Ibrahim clasped those trembling hands. No words needed to be said. In that moment, 2 generations, 2 souls, were united by an undying belief, the belief that Africa, no matter how many times it falls, will still rise, stronger, freer, and hold its head higher. As he left the small village, cheers of farewell echoed in the vast space, spreading far and wide like endless waves. Not because they saw a president, but because they saw in him a part of themselves strong, unyielding, and full of hope. As for Mady, his life was immersed in months of silent repentance behind bars. He was no longer the mighty shadow of the Guardian. Now, he was a nobody, working hard every day in the re-education camp, facing contemptuous words and cold eyes. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night, when the silver moonlight shone through the small iron window, Mady would sit quietly and think of the man who had spared him, not because he deserved it, but because he believed in a future that he had betrayed. And in his restless dreams, he saw himself kneeling in the middle of that square, hearing the echoes of Ibrahim's last words. Traitors can be forgiven, but honor once lost can never be recovered. Burkina Faso moved on, with deep wounds and lessons, but most importantly, they moved on with pride. They had an unyielding leader, a torch in the darkness, a warrior of light. And somewhere, amid the prairie winds blowing across the golden fields, people whispered to each other like an ancient prayer. Ibrahim Traoré, the one who chose justice over hatred. The one who rewrote history with his heart